Thank you so much for staying with us from that political conversation. We now want to move on to matters concerning the family, but we so appreciate you for staying with us through and through. I see Alex Wanyandara, thank you for tuning in. Bob Kaugi, thank you so much. Culture, John, thank you so much. Mark, thank you for tuning in. Koros, I see you. Albert Mwaniki, this is Marik, thank you so much for tuning in, as well as Sisi. Thank you so much for following the conversation. We welcome you to continue staying with us through and through until we get done with this conversation. So right now, switching to today's topic of discussion, as I had mentioned earlier on in the intro, but if you are not with us today, we're going to be talking about handling disappointment and how we can do so in constructive and healthy ways, given we are now emerging on the other side of this pandemic. So much has been lost and so much has been learned during this time, but how have we been doing that? We have seen an upsurge in the number of cases of domestic violence being reported. The number of people who have lost their jobs are countless. So how are we journeying through that process to just deal with the situation and alternatively resort to ways post this pandemic that are constructive for us and not destructive in any manner? That is what we want to talk about, and we also want to hear from you. If you have lost your job, if you're going through a breakup, or just what you have learned during this time, we want to hear from you. Do feel free to share with us your thoughts using the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. My handle is Jane Mamboy, and across all social media platforms. So I will be sampling your views as we proceed on with this particular discussion. So helping us with this discussion this morning, we have in studio with us Njoki Mwangi. She is a family and marriage counselor. Karibu sana Njoki.
Thank you. Good morning, Kenya.
Good morning. Always a pleasure having you.
Thank you. I love being here.
All right. And also joining us via Zoom is Fred Abok, who is a mentor and a motivational speaker as well. Abok, are you with us? All right, we'll be checking in with Abok in not too long. But let's just get straight into it, Njoki. Now, I was just, as I was going about my research for this particular issue, I came across a statement that said, disappointment is one of the most complex and misunderstood emotion. As a counselor, do you support this particular statement?
Yes, I do, because I think what we need to realize is disappointment is part of life. Mm-hmm. And we cannot say we're immune from disappointments. I mean, yes, they will come at one point in our lives. So the difference is, to be able to understand, is it really within my control, or is it something that I could have avoided, or is it something that really I have no control over? So if you're able to actually separate events and situations and really be able to analyze and know that this thing, I could not have done much about it, but this one probably, there's something I can do and learn about it. But of course, what makes it very complex is because then emotions come with that. And many times we're not able to separate our emotions from the events. And now it becomes very difficult. It causes stress. The issues you're talking about, divorce in marriage, suicide, ideations, all those things bring it up.
Now, looking at the fact that, disappointment is still a very hard emotion and complex emotion for most people, do you think also the way we were brought up and the way we are bringing up kids could actually have a hand in how we handle disappointments and other life storms in this when we are adults?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
What's the relationship there? Help us understand.
In our formative years, usually it's about how you're interacting with your parents, first and foremost, or your caregivers, and your caregivers could even be the DMs, the domestic managers who are there. And then after that, you're going to school. Children are going to school even as early as 3 years. And their formative years, you could say up to seven years. So how it is handled, first and foremost, from when a child is young, how was the relationship? Were they securely attached to their parents?
Yes.
What was it? Did they feel secure? Were there love? Did they feel love in that family? So you'll find that children who actually, they grew up in very critical families, feeling that there were disappointment, nothing really good was coming out of their lives, you'll find that they will have difficulties dealing with disappointments in life. So of course, I affirm that, and I believe that whatever happens when children are young, not just young, even growing up, the interactions affects how they deal with disappointment. And it's interesting because most of the issues that people come up with, and I said the other time, Jane, that we go even to the genogram and ask, how was your relationship with your parents growing up? What do you remember to be the funniest moments growing up? What was your worst moments growing up? And you find that the issues that people are struggling with, even 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, are actually issues that happen to them when they were very young, in primary school, in preschool. So I totally support that. I agree with that research.
All right. And still looking at, the role that upbringing has to play when it comes to how we handle life storms, there's also this debate about, as parents, of course, we want the best for our kids. And you find sometimes we shield them from each and every adversity in life, such that growing up, they have never known any hustle, any trouble, and they consequently don't know how to react when they are in situations where they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Is this also setting our children up for some challenges when it comes to how they handle their lives much later?
Oh, yeah, it does. And you'll find that, you see, when children are growing up, especially like when they're learning to play and socialize with their age mates, sometimes us as parents, you can be a bit protective, you don't want your child to be hurt.
Yeah.
So you hear a child fell probably outside, they were playing with their friends, and you go running and you're panicking, or you seated somewhere with your buddies and you're just having fun and you keep on saying, where's the baby? Where have you gone? Don't go far. So this child doesn't feel free to explore and learn. I mean, if they fall, I think when we were growing up, my mom, even if we fell and we were playing, she would really ignore us. And until she realizes you're really hurt, then you start realizing, oh, I can actually manage these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a way that if we protect our children so much, actually we're working against them. There is an inner strength that comes just learning from challenges. That's being able to navigate the storms of life makes people stronger. If you're so controlled, so hidden, so just in that place, it's just the life around your home. When you go out, life can really become difficult.
It can. And now there's that one group, and then there's another group who have just grown up experiencing all sorts of adversities. They haven't known what it is to just live. Having 3 meals in a day, that's a luxury. So they are so used to having it hard, such that when they have good, they don't know how to handle that. How do we also just try to bring some sense of balance for this different category? The ones that are so exposed to the hardships of life, they don't even appreciate some of the good that they get to experience because they know this will not last. Another disappointment is coming.
Yeah, and it seems like most people in such categories, they always feel like they're just holding their breath until the next...
Just waiting, for the next disappointment.
It's like actually you're already self-sabotaging because you're expecting something will go wrong. And many times when people come for counseling and they're having issues, they feel they've no self-worth, they are struggling with their esteem, and you're asking them, what is your greatest achievement in life? And they say, I really never achieved anything. At 40, 50, even 60 years, even 70. And when you start going and breaking it down a bit and you're saying, do you know even just passing class 8 is an achievement?
Yeah.
Do you know even just passing Form 4? And then after that, when you start breaking out into small bits, then they tell you things that they would not have imagined were actually achievements. So I think also being able to celebrate ourselves for the little things that we have done is very, very important. Can we be able to enjoy life at the moment and just say that good is good enough? I'm here and good is good enough. Can I just celebrate this moment where I'm in without really looking forward and saying, let me hold my breath. There's a pattern in my life that things go wrong. Let me just celebrate good now. Good is good enough.
Learning to live in the moment and not in the past or expecting the worst.
Live in the present.
All right. Now, also joining us, remember I had mentioned we're going to be having Fred Abok joining us, who is now with us joining via Zoom. Karibu sana, Fred.
Thank you. How are you doing?
We are very well, thank you. Now, as mentioned today, we're talking about, handling disappointments. And I just want to bring you in at this particular point in regards to, as parents, do you think we set our children for hardships in life when we tend to protect them so much from the adversities in life as we bring them up?
Thank you so much, Jen. At some point, I do set our children up for challenge because you do not protect them so much. You know, life is about discovering yourself, and discovery is about the challenges that goes on in life. And so, you know, when the only challenges that they can actually be able to experience is what they see on the TV, and you know, they have not gone to they have not been able to expose themselves physically to these challenges, it becomes a challenge to them to experience personal, first-hand challenges in life that can be able to expose them to the realities of life. And so I think it requires opportunity on the way we raise our children today by exposing them to some of these dynamics so that they can be able to acquire, you know, a whole set of experience on how to deal with challenges in life.
Okay. Now, coming back to you, Njoki, how then do we help our children, and still looking at this aspect of bringing them up, just know how to find a balance when it comes to being overly ambitious and also not being an underachiever? And especially thinking of these two different group categories of children and how they have been brought up. How do you now just try to bring a balance when you are interacting with them in different spaces?
I think so one of the things I think I would say is also learn to hold loosely. Just learn to hold loosely to these children. Allow them to be themselves. I mean, all of us are individuals. We have different personalities. Even in a family of 5 children, each child will exhibit different ways they want to do things. So hold loosely, teach them, work with them, teach them, learn what are their interests, what are their weaknesses, and work with them. Instead of really being overwhelming with your own indoctrinations or your own wants. And, you know, sometimes parents, we can be those things of, this is what I want my child to be.
Projecting your life on them.
Yeah, and I start living my life in that child. So really this child never gets to actualize what they are, what their life really is. So also having conversations. Conversations are very important. And you realize that most children who come for counseling, they just say, really, my parents really don't know anything about me. They don't know who my friends are. They don't know my favorite meal. They don't know anything. So can we have conversations even at the dinner table? It's interesting that at the dinner table, either the dinner table or whatever works for you, or breakfast table, that is when children start giving you stories. So you can be able to pick bits and bits of what this child is and be able to direct them in that direction. Some parents actually say they really don't know how to deal with their children. Can you be able to get a mentor that is trusted? That is trusted and they can work with this child.
All right. And Abok, I also want to hear from you, especially as a parent, when it comes to how you try to just teach your children how to handle disappointments in life in a way that you just make sure that they are not overly ambitious and they're also not underachievers.
I think one of the greatest aspects in disappointment is to train our children to accept disappointment. Because denying disappointment is actually denying the sting. And it locks the room for an opportunity to have an holistic approach on how to be able to deal with this situation. So when they get to accept, the next thing is that they get to adjust, because disappointment creates a kind of an inconvenience in our life, and you know, things have actually not gone on the same. But what you need to, when you get to accept, then you get to adjust. Now, when you adjust, you begin to look at things in another perspective. What is my contribution in this? Or if there was something that is out of me that made this contributed, then how can I be able to maneuver my way through it and be able to bring the best out of it? And you know, when you adjust, the next thing is stop drawing on where you are actually get disappointed. It is important to move on.
Okay.
Moving on has actually been the greatest challenge, because people stick onto disappointment, and what comes in is fear. And so we are a replica of what we went through. And you know what? Everyone has gone through disappointment. And it's important to let our children know that disappointment is part of life. It is actually a feedback on some of the things that actually we've gone through. And so when we get to move on, we get to understand that behind on what we come from, there was a disappointment. And where we are headed on, chances are high that we can still get disappointed. And how then we deal with it? They say once beaten, twice shy. But you know what? Once beaten, twice better.
All right, I like that. Now let's just move on to the next aspect, and this is all about expectation. Now, Alexander Pope once said that blessed is who expects nothing, for he shall never be disappointed. Another one said that, expectations is the mother of disappointment. Njoki, is it really possible to journey through life without expectations in the different spaces that we find ourselves?
I like the one that actually you said, and it's interesting. I came across that caption somewhere about the heartaches, but also realize that very high expectations causes high frustrations. So it's also to be very realistic with our expectations, so that they're not too high or too low.
Yes. Because
also now, if you are an underperformer, you're going to be disappointed in life. But then again, if you put a very, very high scale to yourself, especially for people who consider themselves perfectionists, then that also becomes a source of a problem. I think one of the challenges that people are having actually in life, and even as us as grown-ups, is being able to separate a problem from myself.
Yes.
So that you're able to say that I'm not the problem is actually the problem. I'm not the problem is actually the problem. So being able to say, this is Njoki, and Njoki is not the problem. This is the problem. Which is the problem in the relationship? Could be communication. That is the problem. If it is work related in my career, then I'm able to separate and say, this is Njoki, but in this career, there's something that has happened. Can we be able to pinpoint it out? So that it is not about, I have failed in my marriage, I have failed in my career, I have failed in ABCD. No, it is that particular event that failed or that particular project. So when you are able to externalize that, it is easier to deal with a problem. But when you're taking everything, you're just packing it in a briefcase, and you're carrying that briefcase, it becomes very heavy, you keep on dragging it, and you're never unpacking it. Then why wouldn't you have heartaches?
So what skills do you feel are going to help us know how to better manage our expectations? Given, even a baby has expectations. A baby will see you and lift their hands. They expect you to carry them. And when you don't, they get so disappointment, and they don't know how to handle that. Which skills do you think are going to help us better know how to manage our emotions when we are in situations that consequently end in disappointment?
Oh, there are several. So one of them, accept that disappointments are part of life. Just accept that. Then be able to just separate, as we have said. But rather than that is that every problem, there are several ways of attacking it.
Yes.
So being able to say, I tried A and it didn't work. Can I try B, C, and E? Look at different options of dealing with this problem. Many times people just have one option.
Yes.
And one option is not an option. You need to have several ones so that you can evaluate them.
Okay.
Then, we've talked a lot in this show about support system. Who is your support system? Are there people you can talk to and really be able to speak your mind, even just talk about the feelings that you're experiencing? Because feelings are real.
Yes.
They'll be there and they will go. But when you deal with them, then we'll be able to move on. Who are these people that will listen to you without really judging you? The other time, I can't remember which show we talked about, can we be able to self-soothe?
Self-soothing mechanisms.
Yeah, can we just be able to self-soothe? When you're going through those moments, you're feeling down and sad, what re-energizes me? Can I do that? For me, I do movies, I do coffee. What else do you want to do? Do you want to go for a massage? Do you want to go listen to music? Do you want to go jog? Do you want to, all those sort of things. Then there's journaling. We need to start appreciating the power of the pencil.
Writing it out.
Can we write it out? And when we write it out, you can go back 1 year later, 3 years later, 10 years later, and you can actually be able to gauge your growth and see that you have really grown. But when you're just there, you're not really sure. You cannot even be able to check the milestones in your life. I
Okay.
think the other one I would talk about is read autobiographies. They're very awesome. I have read several. Watch documentaries. I've read. I mean, this child will be great by Ellen Johnson, the president of is it Liberia. She's written awesome things. The Girl Who Dared to Dream by Betty Kekonyo. There are several people, even in this country. Listen to their stories. They just motivate you. What about Thomas Edison? Is it Edison, the guy of the bulb? How many
Edison.
times did he try the bulb? 1,000 times. And he said it was just a step. For him, it wasn't a disappointment. So there are so many. KFC guy, I think, his story is awesome. That recipe was rejected over 1,000 times. How many franchises do we have of KFC in Kenya?
So learn
And
from those who
worldwide.
have gone ahead of you.
Read. You don't need to learn from your own mistakes. Can you learn from the mistakes of others as well?
Okay. Abok, I'd also like to get your thoughts when it comes to, learning to manage our expectations and learning to do so early in life so that you don't journey through life not knowing how to handle unmet expectations, and consequently your reaction is always disappointment, and you also don't know how to manage that disappointment.
Great. I think Njoki has actually brought with expectation, there's a requirement to get out of your comfort zone, because just as she say that don't set lower expectations that you can actually accomplish without any kind of adjustment. But also, higher expectations are so that when you don't achieve them, you actually can look back and say, I have tried a certain level. Because there are some expectations that you don't even realize when you achieve them. Now, the other thing is build synergy. What kind of the partnership? Who's holding on your ladder? Who's standing on besides you? Because there are people who are always speaking negative. They are discouraging of what you cannot achieve. They look at you and they sum you up that you cannot achieve this. Don't even.
All right, we're having a bit of issues there with Abok. We're having a bit of issues with that particular link with Abok, but we'll be getting him back with us in a bit. But before we get to hear what he has to say in regards to that, I want us to move on to now coping mechanisms that are healthy and ultimately constructive when it comes to how we deal with a disappointment. And Njoki, when it comes to acknowledging the situation as the first step, why is that important?
It is very important to be able to acknowledge because we are all human beings, and sometimes disappointments and hurt and losses really affect us. Yes. So, but in this acknowledging, it is important to be able to understand what feeling is bringing that. So let's be able to identify which feeling is this. Is it sadness that I'm feeling? Is it anger that I'm feeling? When we're able to identify, then it is easier to be able not to internalize everything and deal with that particular feeling that is there. The other thing why it is important to acknowledge is because then you're able to single-handedly deal with that particular option. So that it is not a lot of accumulation of disappointments, but a specific thing that you're dealing with. And one of the things, people talk about SMART goals in their organizations, in their work, business, and I mean the projects they do. But how many people do SMART goals on their own? On their own life? Are the things that I'm saying, you know what I'm talking about, specific? What is this specific thing? Are they realistic? All those things. So be able to be very, very intentional in working out things and not piling them. Because with time, it becomes so many, as I was talking about the briefcase, you don't even know what issue you're really dealing with.
All right. Now, another aspect I want us to look at is emotional intelligence. And most of us, you find we don't really understand what emotional intelligence is until you find yourself in a situation that triggers so many different emotions at a go, and you consequently don't know how to handle them. You end up just blowing up or just doing the most natural thing to do as human, and it is to just blow up. Emotional intelligence and the relationship with handling disappointment. Njoki.
Oh, thank you. So emotional intelligence, for a long time, I think it's something that has been really misunderstood. And we can see most people will react to situations instead of respond to what is happening. And when you find that people are struggling with emotions, you find that they'll introject everything to themselves. And they bring bad feelings. If it's not that, they will project. You'll project it to your children, you'll project it to your workmates. So being able to go back and take time, even just being able to de-escalate, it's not even about the fights there, but can you de-escalate by yourself and self-soothe? Go back by yourself and say, can I just take time to think about what has happened? Because now, if you don't do that, then you find that you'll find yourself in rage, in fights. Even as you're driving the car, I mean, your emotions are all over, or you'll get into other habits probably.
Yes.
Things that probably people would consider antisocial. So just being able, can I take time just to be able to reflect? Reflect, it is very important. Just take that 20 minutes and ask yourself. But it's something that people have to learn. If you don't know it, it's something that you learn. And for our children, to be able to teach them early on in life. When the children are also getting angry in the house, they're throwing tantrums, you can actually tell them, just have a moment, think about it, discuss the emotions, teach them early.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you know, when we are seeing children throwing tantrums, we are African parents, una shamora.
Yeah, and that's how we were brought up. And
that's how we've been brought up.
That's also we do it.
Yeah.
But we are learning. And everything we learned can be unlearned and can be relearned.
All right.
And times are changing. So we move on in times. Culture has really changed. We are not those days where we'd sit with our aunties and uncles up country and they would teach us. Dynamics have really changed. So let's try and adapt what it is that we need to and not be so rigid.
Okay.
Yeah. All
right. Now, let me come to you, Abok, and still looking at emotional intelligence and learning that, you know, wallowing in negativity is not going to change the situation that you are in as much as you've been disappointed. Wallowing and pity-partying in that pool of negativity is not going to help, and especially for the youth. What do you have in regards to say about that, Abok?
I think setting out yourself into understanding that disappointments occur in life helps you to move out of the comfort zone and understanding that this is part of life. But of course, it's when you, I said earlier, it is important, you know, to move on in a way that reflects the understanding. Can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, I think we're still having
Jen,
a few issues there with Abok's uplink. As we try and get that sorted once more. Njoki, just looking at that particular issue again, we tend to wallow in negativity for so much, especially when things don't go our way. How long is too long when you're in that situation to just realize you need to pick yourself up and just move from that negativity pool?
So I think one of the things that we can do, and most of us should just be able to start learning, it's a technique that we can start picking up, even just from now. Negative thoughts keep coming in and out because of disappointment and frustrations. So it's just being able to capture it the moment it comes and change it into a positive. Because what happens with a negative thought, then a negative feeling follows. And if the negative feeling follows, chances are that you'll be down, you feel useless, you feel depressed and all that. But if you're able to change it immediately, capture it at that point, start thinking different thoughts. If you're feeling angry, can you look for something to interject that? So being able to capture it at that point, it is very important. But also another thing that is very important is, can we be able to rewrite our stories?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we write our stories and our stories are just negative and negative. So we need to be at a point and say, this is not going to be my story.
Mm-hmm.
This could be the book. This is the way this chapter started. But chapter 3 could be different. I could start writing a new script and say, this is what is going to define me, Njoki and her love life, Njoki and her story of her career.
Mm-hmm.
Start writing what you envision your life to be, as opposed to what it has been. So start visualizing what this is. And it kind of, when you have such positive thoughts and feelings, it kind of propels you. I mean, you have that kind of happy moment, kind of propels you and motivates you to do something different. It kind of also gives you an inner strength. But also to emphasize that through disappointments, many people have grown. What are the lessons that you're learning? What are the unique outcomes that are coming from there? Because there's always a sparkling thing. Every challenge, you can learn something from it for your betterment.
All right. So it's okay to feel bad, but just don't set camp there.
Oh, yes. It's okay to feel bad. We're human, and humans make mistakes.
Just don't
But
do it for
it
too
doesn't
long.
mean because you've fallen in the mud, now we wallow there. No,
Yes.
no. You can dust yourself and walk.
And move on. All right, before we get to move to the next aspect, I just want to hear back from you, Abok. We are back with him. This issue of wallowing in negativity when things don't always go your way.
Yeah, Jen, wallowing in negativity, number one, only just drain off the energy. You cannot stick in a circumstance for too long. Everyone who has ever made it successful in life has always gone through a disappointment at some one point. Now, getting to understand that moving on is a recipe for change will help you to dynamically maneuver your way out of the quagmire of disappointment and get yourself together.
Yes.
Because you need to realize that on your process of accepting disappointment, there are contributions that even you as an was a party to. And when you forgive yourself, you tell yourself that it's not particular on me, or there is nothing in me that is unique that makes me disappointed, but I can always make a try again. Just the examples that Njoki gave on the other time. Everyone who has ever made it up in life was a disappointment, was a failure at one particular point, but they do not look at the failure. It's about, how do you identify yourself? Because self-identity has been a crisis in many people's lives.
Yes.
People have a misconceived element in identity, and so they want to be somebody. And so when they fail in one circumstance, they tend to feel like that is not them. That is they want to pick up a picture, or they want to pick up a scenario of someone else. But when we get to move on by accepting, then adjusting, then it will help us to, first of all, understand what caused this failure and how can I be able to avoid it next time.
All right. And just on the same breath, you've mentioned one aspect that I was actually going to, and this is understanding your role in getting to where you are in that situation. And I just want to continue with you, Abok. When it comes to understanding that you had a role to play to get to where you are, and especially that disappointing situation, why is it important to acknowledge that fact that you contributed to getting to there?
Now, acknowledging is very important because it gives you an operation dynamic on how to move out of it. Because acceptability is the number one principle that will help you to know what specific role did I play in this, and what other things, what can I be able to change. Take, for example, you knock a down Ivy. Now, it's the car is definitely not, but what role did I play? Or how can I be able, was I overspeeding? Was I on foot? Was I ignorant on the rules of the road? Now, when you understand it may be late at that particular time, but not be cautious not to do it again. Now, understand is a principle that will help each and every person to both realize actualization of themselves, but also to get to acquire the aspect of their environment. And this is very important because we are actually in an environment that how we feel and behave. We also have the ability within us to make that environment be a better place for us to exist in. So our understanding, both are in us and the environment that we are, will help us to be in peace, both with ourselves and the environment that we are.
All right, Njoki, your thoughts as well on this issue of, just taking a step back, doing some introspection, and understanding what role you as the person who is in that situation had to play.
Okay, I totally agree with Abok and the sentiments that he has brought. It's very important to be able to acknowledge and take responsibility of your situation, because then if you don't learn from this situation, chances are that you're going to repeat the same mistake. And I cannot emphasize the power of reflection and journaling. That you can sit down after a certain disappointment or a certain event in life and write what you went through. And in the same place, be able to be very candid with yourself and ask, what would I have done differently? If this situation came again, how would I tackle it? That makes a very big difference. But one of the biggest problem is because people take it as a whole and they decide, I'm a failure, I'm this, instead of actually tackling the situation. But even after tackling the situation and realizing your role, it is also very important that you forgive yourself. How will you move on if you don't forgive yourself? So it's very important, even after acknowledging, that you forgive yourself and say, if the situation comes again, I have 3, 4, 5 ways I could handle it differently.
All right.
So already you've set yourself up for success. And even if it doesn't work, if these people have done 1,000 times, what would prevent us? We are enjoying light bulbs because of somebody who had unsuccessful attempts over 1,000 times. And today, it's probably one of the biggest industries in the world.
All right. Now, as we draw the conversation to a close, one more thing that I'll just talk about is in regards when it comes to dealing with disappointments, is learning that knee-jerk reactions are not always long-term solutions. In as much as sometimes it might be a good maternal right, but for most part, knee-jerk reactions, are they really a to-go-to response when you are just dealing with a situation that just hit you so badly? Njoki, let's start with you.
Most times when you do those things just at the impasse or very fast, it's because you're running with emotions. Your mind is not even there. You've not really thought about it. And most times the mistake that you made is likely to come back. Still go back and check. Who goes to battle even without preparing? Can you sit back and check? What are the loopholes? What are the gaps that are there?
Yes.
Yeah, and settle your emotions. Sometimes we run into things because you don't want to get into touch with the emotions that are there. Sadness, worry, anger. Can we first deal with those ones? When you deal with those ones, then your mind is kind of a bit clear to be able to have a direction to move forward.
So going back to acknowledging how you feel and the situation.
Perfect.
All right. Abok, when it comes to knee-jerk reaction, and especially with we, the younger category, we tend to be very emotive when in situations that, trigger so much emotion. So we go with the immediate feeling you are feeling, and consequently, you find yourself in just a vicious cycle, learning that knee-jerk reactions are not always the best responses.
Jen, it's important to understand that life is a journey. And when it's a journey, it's a continuous movement that we need to constantly be focused on to where we are going. Knee-jerk reactions is like putting a full stop where God has put a comma, and now you want to, you want to jump out onto the other side. Now, knee-jerk reaction denies us the opportunity to refocus, because when a disappointment comes, there was a focus on a certain kind of aspect. But now it is for us to be able to get out of the issue, there is need to refocus. There is a need to realign. and there is a need to reestablish yourself. These are a process that requires time. They require a certain limit of understanding yourself, but also they require an environment of grace to forgive yourself of the issues that have actually taken place and get to understand that in the midst of what happened, you are on a journey to a certain place. So knee-jerk reactions are challenge, because most of my counseling, you find that someone, for example, is in drugs because they fail in a certain thing, or their marriages is going through a turmoil, or that kind of thing. And so they get into this drinking and all this. But you discover that when it comes down, the person go again back into drinking. When we do a knee-jerk reaction, it denies us the process of approaching systematically onto getting to the ultimate result of our expectation.
All right. And there's one, Valentina, who's saying when it comes to dealing with disappointments, when you sugarcoat your situation, you will never grow and be great from it. Again, going back to acknowledging the situation as is and understanding your role in regards to that. Now, Susie also saying sometimes we need to revisit our past to understand how to best move on and deal with disappointments moving forward. Now, as we wind the conversation, Njoki, understanding the role of planning and how vital it is to avoid ending up in disappointing situations.
Planning is very important. And as I was saying, nobody even goes to war without a plan. And even when you look at the structures in our life, even the government, they have planning institutions.
Yes.
You start the year and there's a certain plan that the people are going through or that will guide. And even apart from even planning, sometimes even these plans may not go as we expected them to go. And it is okay to go back to the drawing board and say, this one actually didn't work. But also in that planning, there were successes that were there. So being able to celebrate those things. Sometimes our plans are very short term. Can we also be able to plan much, much ahead, 5 years, 10 years? Because also it gives us a more of like a vision board where you can be able to see things that you would want in the future. It also gives you motivation. And I think for our youth mostly and our children, being able to sit down with them and let them know, like Abok is saying, life is a process. You're here at this moment you have. How long do you see yourself living? Up to 70 years, and you're just 18. You can't give up in life. How would you want to see your life at 50, 60, 70 years? So that you can be able to even motivate yourself to move forward.
All right. Now, there's one Aisha here who's saying, I actually hate to hear other people say that I have it worse. I know, but at that point, it is not necessary to say what you are feeling. I am dealing with my own disappointments in my own way. And with that, we are completely out of time, but we appreciate you for sharing with us your thoughts in regards to this particular discussion. I have been speaking with Fred Abok, who is a mentor and a motivational speaker who has joined us via Zoom. And in studio, we have with us, that is Abok on your screens right there. And in studio, we have Njoki Mwangi, who is a family and marriage counselor. Thank you so much, Abok and Njoki, for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right. Now that brings us to a close of Good Morning Kenya. Thank you so much for staying with us. Be sure to join us again tomorrow morning right here on Good Morning Kenya. I'm Jane Wamboy. Have a lovely day. God bless. See you tomorrow.